All right, welcome back to another episode of the First and 35 podcast. Nobody really cares who we are or why we're here, but yet here we are once again. Nothing can stop us from wasting a few hours of our day coming up here in the cold, recording our voices, talking about sports. Last week, not a whole lot going on, pretty boring. Talked about the current state of affairs of the world and the planet, a little bit depressing. Thank God NFL free agency happened on time, or else we'd be back there, just feeling bad about ourselves. But holy crap, there's a lot to get into, so that's at least fun. We'll have something to talk about this week. Few other NHL and MLB stuff going on as well, so it's actually not a bad week in terms of content.
A lot of just
right?
entry level stuff.
And minor league stuff in baseball, but the NFL, because that's the meat and bones of this episode, we'll probably get to quote unquote last, even though there's not really a whole lot else to talk about. But how about we start for baseball today? Because why the hell not? Surprisingly, there's actually still stuff going on. Very minor things and very few things, but there's still news. Couple minor league signings, because why the hell not at this point in the game? The Nationals signed starting pitcher Alan Webster to a minor league deal. He was with the Cubs last year, didn't come up too much, only a few relief appearances. The Angels signed Dustin Peterson to a minor league deal. He didn't pan out with the Giants, I think. The Phillies signed an international prospect named Yosbar Garcia to a minor league deal, and the Giants signed a kid younger than us to a undisclosed deal, so not a minor league deal. He's probably already made more money than any of us have.
Yep.
Javier Alexander Francisco is his name, and if the season ever starts, he'll be playing in low A ball for the San Francisco Giants. The Giants also claimed Jose Siri, an outfielder off waivers from Seattle, who previously claimed him off waivers from Cincinnati. I don't know why, really, because I think the Giants have a pretty decent standing outfield, but maybe he can squeak in as their fourth guy, again, if the season ever actually starts. The Orioles claimed Hector Velasquez off waivers from Boston. He probably is their second starting pitcher now. Boston got rid of him last week, or 2 weeks ago, as we mentioned, because when they picked up Colin McHugh, so they had to get rid of him. The Orioles got him. The Cardinals released Yairo Munoz because he got injured and said, "See, I'm flying back to my own country." Didn't tell anyone, and the Cardinals didn't like that. So he's gone. He was good enough to be in the majors last year as a utility man.
Right?
Yeah. But he'll get a deal somewhere, I'm sure, if it's just ends up being a big misunderstanding. Somebody, I think he was an Oakland A's infielder prospect for quite a while, and then he went to St. Louis, and then they used him in a utility spot there. But I think he'll get another deal eventually. The Nationals released Hunter Strickland, Bryce Harper's best friend in the whole wide world. 1 year after winning a World Series, and him being a decent enough reliever to be on the
major league
reliever, something that they were severely lacking in years prior. They cut him and let him go. And the Mariners just this morning released reliever Sam Tuivalela. No idea really why, because he had like a 2.35 ERA and did really well with them at the end of last year. And I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know if anybody ever thinks that Jerry Dipoto has a plan in place at any point in time. But I really don't think this is. It's something. It's a process of
elimination.
Yes, I don't know why. He's gonna get a job somewhere else, obviously, because he pitched well in the majors for them last year. I think he's 26 now. I think he pitched in about 23 innings last year, racked up 27 strikeouts. He's a usable major league guy. Reliever Jared Hughes, who we just talked about a few weeks ago, signing on with the Houston Astros. Quit on the Houston Astros. He opted out of his major league deal with the team.
Interesting timing.
Yes, well, he could have done it now. He could have done it later. I'm sure he probably did it now just so they could have a picture of, okay, we have one more spot that needs to be filled. Not that they deserve to have that extra time anyways, because everything that can go wrong probably should go wrong for them. But he opts out. He'll get a shot somewhere else because he's a usable major league arm. A couple Blue Jays. Piece of Blue Jays news. The Blue Jays added Joe Panik to the 40-man roster and announced that he'll make the team if the season ever starts.
He was raking in the spring.
He was.
He was, even before the spring, probably going to make the 40-man roster.
Yes.
Or presumably.
Yeah, really, in my opinion, it came down to maybe him or maybe Santiago Espinal, and I think they just wanted to give Espinal a little bit more time in the minors. But Panik makes the team. They put Yancy Diaz on a 60-day IL for a lat thing, I want to say. And then they also optioned yesterday starting pitchers Anthony Kay and quote-unquote starting pitcher Sean Reed Foley to AAA Buffalo. That pretty much narrows it down to Trent Thornton, and that's about it for the 5th spot. I think he's got it. Yamaguchi, I mean, he wasn't looking great anyways, but with this break, and Thornton's pitched the majors, he started before. It'll be Thornton's spot again if the season ever actually
Thornton's
starts.
spot to lose.
Yes.
Yeah.
A bunch of Tommy John surgery news. The big one being Chris Sale, Boston's supposed ace. He was having arm issues. He went on a throwing program recently, so that was like, oh, maybe good news. Maybe we won't need Tommy John. He needs Tommy John surgery. And it's probably now's as good a time as any to go and take it for any of these guys because you have time off. The season might not even happen, so you might not even have to worry about that.
Yeah.
San Francisco starting pitcher Tyler Beede. Andres Munoz, a young reliever on the Padres, and Reggie Lawson, a San Diego minor leaguer, are also all going under the knife for Tommy John. Tyler Beede was supposed to be, I think, the 4th or 5th guy in the Giants rotation. He looked very good last year at times. And he's a young guy. He's one of their up and coming guys, and then the latter two guys on the Padres. Munoz was a fireballer, 21-year-old, up last year. I don't think Lawson pitched too much of the majors. I don't know if he did at all, but all those guys will be out for a considerable amount of time.
Probably about a year.
Yeah. And then in the midst of all this chaos and crises that are going on this planet, minor leaguers are still going to get paid, which is probably the best news they've heard in quite a while.
Yeah.
Because the last time we had minor league news, outside of stupid idiots signing with teams, the Yankees minor leaguer got COVID. So, hey.
Wasn't it 2 of them?
Well, it ended up being 2 of them. I think it was originally just 1. But, yes, they'll still get paid. I don't know what that actually means. I mean, paying someone $1 a day is still paying them, technically. So, I don't think the information has been released on that. But, I mean, they've always gotten screwed over, I think, for, decades upon decades now. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was something kind of ridiculous. Like, oh, here's $250 a month, something stupid like that, right, to help you.
Yeah.
But, if they say they're going to help pay, then I guess we have to take that at face value. Players and teams are, putting in money saying we'll help pay our, the people, the staff working the place. And some of that money will obviously go to minor leaguers as well. But we'll just have to wait and see until, the official how much is getting moved around comes out. And then outside of that, really it's just the leagues. There was an idea thrown out there a couple days ago with the intention of trying to keep as many games as possible, that you'll want to have like many double headers. And I thought that was actually a pretty decent idea because, it's one way, it's really the only way at this point to say if you want to get as many games in as you can, there's no other way really. You can't start it
once you start running out of days, you're running out of options.
Yes, so I think that'll be a really interesting one to just keep an eye on in case something.
It's easy to say, we'll just start it later, but if you're playing into December and like, what if Minnesota makes the playoffs, right? You can't play a World Series game in Minnesota in December.
Yeah,
so it's just not.
Yeah, I think you have to take into account like the feasibility of it, like arena stadiums that are actually free and able to be used. Exactly. Whether there are fans or not, I don't think there will be fans.
Yeah,
but you have to take into account where it's being played, when it's being played, who's playing where. If the Jays play a doubleheader in New York a Saturday, is it feasible to have a doubleheader in Arizona the next night? No, probably not. Right, so you have to take into account that's schedule making.
Because like teams like LA and West Coast teams, it's warm, right? Like who cares? You're playing in November, whatever. Might be a little cool, but you can't just say, this team's gonna be in the playoffs. You don't know.
Yes, and with travel too and all that, right? Because it's such a long flight, and it's there's so many aspects to it that we can't really speculate on it. But it was an idea that was thrown out there, and it seemed kind of interesting. It'd be something completely new. It would probably benefit the Jays. In terms of they're such a young team as opposed to take an older team.
Yeah.
Who it's harder on the veteran players to get up, play 2 games, because so many of them are used to when it does really happen. You have all your backups play 1, as many as you can, and then just swap guys around, right? Like the first baseman might be DH. You can't just
do that.
Yes, you can't do that, especially in a shortened season. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see on that one. Speaking of shortened seasons, the NHL. No one really knows what's going on there either. They hope to dish out a Stanley Cup this year at some point, although I really don't think that's likely at all right now. And not a whole lot going on there either, not really surprisingly. A bunch of announcements that were saying, owners of teams, players of teams, they're donating money to the people, that are falling out of a job position
exactly.
right now.
They just announced today the Bruins were the final team that agreed to pay their arena staff,
and it had to happen at some point.
Yeah.
Like it had to happen. You couldn't not do it. I think it was. So, there was some Canadian team that was holding out for a bit. Like I don't know if it was Montreal. I don't want to say it was because if it wasn't, but there was some Canadian team that was saying, "Oh yeah, we'll pay you when we're getting paid." It's like, what?
You
that
have
doesn't
so
even
much
make
money.
sense.
It's just like
that doesn't even make sense. But so just a couple minor things to talk about there. Mostly entry level deals because now's as good a time as any to get your name out there and sign with the team. The only one that wasn't an entry-level deal was the Red Wings signed Alex Biega to a 1-year, $875K deal. That's really kind of meaningless because this season might not even happen. That's the other thing. When you sign a 1-year deal or a 1-year extension, if this season doesn't finish,
I have a feeling it would carry
work?
over. I have a feeling, like on rule base, probably not, but I'm sure they would make exceptions for that.
Let's say this entire baseball season, coming back there for a second, let's say this season is just a wipeout, right? No games get played. It's not likely, but let's say nothing happens. Does then Shun Yamaguchi's 2-year deal actually become a 1-year deal next year? Or is it a 2-year deal starting in 2021? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, I don't have the answer. You would think that if they're following the rules that it would expire a year, but if, say, a guy hasn't played one game of that season in the NHL, I feel like...
Because you're getting paid not to play. Right? Like, you're not playing, but you are getting paid. So is that money coming from, part of your contract? Is that... These are all things that teams got to think about, right? And leagues got to think about, because obviously they're not going to go purposely try and screw over guys. At least I don't think so. So they got to take that into account.
Either way, the guys are getting paid.
Yeah. But anyways, there's all these sort of things that we're thinking of, right? Not like we're some genius that has the answers, but somebody has to think about it.
We're also not being paid.
Yes,
provide the answers.
Not being paid. One of many at this point. Penguins signed 2 guys to entry-level deals. Drew O'Connor and Cam Lee both got 2-year deals. The Sabres signed Brandon Bureau to a 2-year deal. The Rangers signed Patrick Kudarenko to a 3-year deal. They also signed Condre Miller, who's probably the most notable of the bunch because he was Team USA Hockey.
2018 first-round pick, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. He got a 3-year deal. A bunch of 1-year guys. The Flames got Connor Mackey to a 1-year deal. The Coyotes got Nathan Soucies to a 1-year deal. And the Canucks got Mark Mikolas to a 1-year deal. And then the Kings also, I guess, was he on the American team last year? Alex Turcotte? Last year he got a 3-year entry-level deal by... I think Kings.
He was the 4th overall pick in last year's draft.
Oh, I have no memory of these guys. And then, not that it's any news, but the Golden Knights prospect forward Cody Glass will be out the rest of the year due to knee surgery.
Another probably good timing.
Yeah, I mean, who really knows what the rest of the year is, because nobody knows the schedule at this point, but that's something to keep an eye on, because he was one of their top guys. I think he was their first draft pick, right? Wasn't he? Cody Glass? He was their first round pick?
First pick.
Yeah,
ever.
Yeah, so he has a lot riding on him, I guess, at least in the history books.
Well, and then he's done well. I mean, he scored his first NHL goal in their first game this year.
Yeah. And then veteran goalie Jonas Hiller announced his retirement the other day. He's 38 now. He had a nice long career.
He was actually really good.
Yeah, he was really good for quite a long time. 9 seasons in the NHL with a .255 goals against average. In 404 games, he had a .914 save percentage.
Really respectable.
Yes, pretty good. Also known for his creative pad colors and his creative jersey and all that. So he
played for I think he played for the Ducks and the Flames.
Flames.
I'm not sure any
other teams too. We're not thinking of them, but those were the 2 notable ones.
Yeah.
I remember he had some really nice golden red Flames pads on his time in Calgary. Mm-hmm. But yes, congrats to him. Nice career. Yeah. I mean, he was only 38 still, and I mean, Henrik Lundqvist is like 60, and he's still playing. But gone on if that's.
Well, I mean, sometimes retiring. Instead of playing ineffectively is just the way to go.
Yes,
right?
He had 19 total pro seasons, so in Europe and in America, wherever. Yeah. But yeah, he called it a career, nice long career for him. And then I would say just jumping straight in the NFL because we have a whopping 1, 2, maybe 2.25 pages of news because NFL free agency kicked off last week. Thank God we all had something, or not we all, but most of us had something to watch and read about. A bunch of trades, bunch of big trades, bunch of big free agent signings, and a bunch of big kind of weird
stupid trades
releases as well. So we're not going to go in depth, I should say, on every single one.
Well,
but a few we will. So just starting with, well, let's start with the franchise tags. Just a few, because there's a couple notable ones. Mainly the Cowboys franchise tag Dak Prescott, which in essence gives you until, a few months, 3 or 4 months, I think, to get an actual deal done before, because obviously he's not going to play under a franchise tag. You're not going to, everyone wants a deal. So that's just kind of a time-killing aspect to this sort of thing. But that was interesting just because they couldn't get a deal done by now. So they're waiting. They're going to try and figure that out. But that's something to watch. AJ Green, another one.
For the Bengals.
Bengals, yes. That's only notable because apparently, allegedly, a few weeks ago, Joe Burrow, the supposed number 1 overall pick, called up Cincy and said, hey, you guys got to keep AJ Green. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And Cincinnati is the first overall pick, so that's probably a little bit of something going on there. Derrick Henry on Tennessee, he's going to get a deal done, absolutely, but he hasn't got one yet. So they're just, it's another time-killing aspect to that. And there were a bunch of other kind of weird ones as well, like Minnesota. I think franchise tagged someone kind of odd on their defense who didn't have too many good seasons. Like he only had really last year was his first good season. I'm not saying his name because I completely forget who it was. But there were a couple weird ones there too. And then the trades started rolling in once the franchise tagging was all said and done. As we said, a couple really big ones, so we'll just dive right into that. The Cardinals got superstar wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins and a 4th-round pick from the Houston Texans in exchange for running back David Johnson, a 2nd-rounder, and a 2021 4th-round pick. That kind of caught everyone by surprise because DeAndre Hopkins is so goddamn good, and Bill O'Brien is... I don't know what Bill O'Brien's doing, because that's
doesn't
nuts.
Make any sense.
I don't know why you would do that. I mean, it's... I have no clue. David Johnson is not what he once was. DeAndre Hopkins is what he is, and that's really goddamn good. And the picks are just whatever. Like, there's no need, strictly speaking, to throw in a 4th-round pick there either. Yeah. Like, it's just another... Like, it was a joke. Like, the Cardinals just pulled out. Like, it wasn't even close. Like, looking at it, David Johnson hasn't done anything for years. Right? Like, he hasn't been his former self.
Garbage last year.
Yeah.
A little less garbage the year before.
Yeah, but he's still not DeAndre Hopkins. And, the picks are the picks, right? Because you don't know who they're going to be. You don't know who they're going to turn out to be. In my mind right now, it's really David Johnson for DeAndre Hopkins. And I think that's very, very one-sided. And I think the Cardinals, they obviously got who they wanted, right? They have him... they have Kyler
Cardinals
Murray.
Perspective.
Yeah, it's great for them,
that
right?
at all.
Yes, the Cardinals are building a really solid team around Kyler Murray and obviously now DeAndre Hopkins, right? With Kenyon Drake still there, who they think can turn out to be something. I think they got Larry Fitzgerald for one more year, right? Year. So it's and a few like Christian Kirk, I think is going to be a breakout sort of guy. He had a decent year last year. So there are guys around him, but with Hopkins, that's obviously going to become his wide receiver 1 right now.
Yeah.
And I think they just, I have no idea what to say. Like, I don't think anybody does because nobody expected them to be that dumb, right? Like, it's out of proportion how nuts it was. But moving on, the Eagles got star cornerback Darius Slay from the Lions in exchange for a third round pick. Then Slay signed a 3-year, $50 million deal with the Eagles right after. The Eagles finally got a little bit of help on defense because they're losing guys left, right, and center. And they're trying to rebuild after making that, the monster run to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Yep. And Darius Slay will help him a lot because he's really, really good. The Colts got DeForest Buckner and then re-signed him to a long-term deal from the 49ers in exchange for the 13th overall pick of this draft. The Colts are seriously building a good guys up front. DeForest Buckner is going to add to that. They have a lot of young guys on offense and defense. And, for the 49ers, I think they just found someone they really like in the draft, and they like him more than DeForest Buckner because he was really, really good for them. And then the contract terms haven't been announced for Buckner, but I think it's roughly $20 million a year, something like that, someone was saying. I don't know if that's right or not, but obviously it's going to be many years. I wouldn't be surprised, like 5 or 6, because he's still very young. He's still very good. The Steelers got Chris Wormley, a 2021 7th-round pick from the Ravens in exchange for a 2021 5th-round pick. Who really cares? It's 2021 5th-round picks, and Chris Wormley is not exactly the best guard in the whole wide world. So that was just kind of a piece filler, like a rotational guy, I would say.
Get a guy, get rid of a guy.
Yeah, or get rid of a pick.
Yeah.
The Falcons got their new starting tight end Hayden Hurst in a 4th-round pick from the Baltimore Ravens in exchange for a 2nd-rounder and a 5th-rounder. Hayden Hurst replaces Austin Hooper, who just signed with the Browns. Hurst didn't get, he was behind Mark Andrews in Baltimore, so he didn't get too much playing time. But in Atlanta, he'll become their tight end 1, I would say, unless they pick someone who they really like in this upcoming draft, too. Another big one, the Bills got wide receiver Stephon Diggs and a 7th-round pick from the Vikings in exchange for a 1st-round pick, a 5th-round pick, a 6th-round pick, and a 2021 2nd-round pick. That's a lot more reasonable in terms of trading star wide receivers, I think. Cough, DeAndre Hopkins. But, the Bills finally get another really, really good wide receiver who they like in Stephon Diggs.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be Josh Allen's main target now. There's no doubt about that. Getting a 1st-round pick for that, I think, is really, really good. On the Vikings side of things, just because, they're not a really good team. They're a good team, but they're not really, really good. And obviously, Stephon Diggs helped them become where they are. But, the thing with being a really good team, right? The NFL is one of those weird... There's only 7 rounds, right, to pick from. So, and the first half of the first round is, generally speaking, much, much different than the second half of the first round in terms of player quality. So, getting a 1st-round pick on the second half of that is more like getting a 1B pick. And they're still really, really good players. Obviously, players have come out of every round and become really, really good. But I think stocking up on those 1B picks are a nice thing to do because it's not, the top. It's not the best, but it's still a 1st-round pick, and Minnesota has their own. Now they have Buffalo's. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head where Buffalo's was. I would say around 20-ish, I would guess. But it's probably actually a little bit lower than that. Maybe like 16th or something around there. But yeah, it's a good spot for them, and obviously I think I want as many 1st-round picks. They may end up moving these guys too, right?
Yeah, that too.
The Bears got their new starting quarterback Nick Foles from the Jaguars in exchange for 4th-round pick. The real winner in all this was Gardner Minshew because he's now the starter in Jacksonville. Foles will compete, I guess, with Mitchell Trubisky, but Trubisky's so bad that by the end of the season, Nick Foles is going to be their starting quarterback. The Broncos got Jarrell Casey, the big man from the Tennessee Titans, in exchange for a 7th-round pick. That was kind of a weird one because they only got a 7th-round pick. Everyone was kind of asking, a 7th-rounder and what? And there was no and what. You just got a 7th-rounder. So, I mean, I think that's more of a contract move than anything, but still, Jarrell Casey was really, really good on the Titans, especially during their run this year. The Ravens also got Calais Campbell from the Jaguars in exchange for a 5th-round pick, and then Calais Campbell signed a 2-year, $27 million deal with the team afterwards, so he'll be locked up relatively reasonably priced, I would say, for the next 2 years. And I would expect more trades to happen as they come, as the days go on, just because, teams still have many, many needs. And then there was the free agency thing, where it was the whole thing, everyone signed everywhere else.
Yep.
And a lot of these we can just run through pretty quickly, I would say, but there's so goddamn many of them. In my humble opinion, I would say, I think so far the 2 winners of the free agency part of the NFL so far would be Oakland, I think has done, or Las Vegas, I guess, has done a really, really nice job with some sneaky pickups for next season. And then, of course, I think Miami probably has won free agency so far. Unbiasedly, of course, but it's nuts. They've spent all this money on these guys, and then I saw the money that they have left over, they still have the 3rd most cap in the league left to spend. So it's nuts. They're blowing all this. I wouldn't be surprised if they get someone else like a safety like Eric Reed who's out on the market or someone like that, just more help on defense. But just to start, run through a lot of these quickly. The Ravens sign defensive tackle Michael Brockers to a 3-year, $30 million deal. Off the top, I noticed that there were actually quite a few 3-year, $30 million deals. Like, how there's sometimes just random, like similar contracts in like baseball or whatever. Three for 30 seems to be this one in the NFL
They
this
like
year.
tens.
Yes. The Giants signed cornerback James Bradbury to a 3-year, $45 million deal. They also signed Blake Martinez and Colt McCoy to be their backup quarterback. Blake Martinez, another 3 for 30 deal. He's an inside linebacker, and then Colt McCoy will obviously back up Daniel Jones, who will get all the starts, I would say, unless he gets injured. The Patriots signed 2 guys, Matthew Slater to a 2-year deal, and Devin McCourty, a longtime DB on the team, to a 2-year, $23 million deal. Both guys were on the Patriots last year, so they're just re-signing them and bringing them back. The Titans got my boy Ryan Tannehill to a 4-year at $118 million deal. He would come back player of the year, outstanding after being traded from Miami to Tennessee last year. He finally gets the money that he really deserves, which is a lot of it. Although a lot of it probably is just him handing the ball off to Derrick Henry anyways.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, you got to catch the
Someone has
snap,
to do
right?
it.
Yeah, somebody has to do it. The Titans also signed Vic Beasley, the former Atlanta cornerback, to a 1-year, $9.5 million deal. He's just another relatively cheap guy that can help on defense. The Rams signed longtime guard Andrew Whitworth to a 3-year deal. He's, I want to say he's 39 or 40 now. So getting a 3-year deal when you're 39
Jesus.
or 40 is...
That might age quickly.
Well, it might age quickly, but he's been extremely consistent all throughout his career. Like, he's showed no signs of slowing down stats-wise. Now, once you hit 40, it probably, your opinion changes, your team's opinions change on you. But it'll probably be his last deal he signs in the NFL before he retires. They also signed Leonard Floyd to a 1-year, $10 million deal. He's an outside linebacker. He'll help with their core because they're also losing guys. The Falcons signed former Ram Dante Fowler Jr. to a 3-year, $48 million deal. And they also signed running back Todd Gurley to a 1-year, $5 million deal.
That seems like nothing.
And it's insane. He's still, I think, because of all the money that the Rams are paying him, he's still one of the 3 highest paid running backs in the league. Although the majority of his contract money is not coming from Atlanta, obviously. It's nuts. It's weird to think of Todd Gurley on any team but LA, but the Rams.
Yeah.
And it'll be weird to see, but he gets a $5 million. It's kind of a prove it deal, right? Because he's had arthritis issues in his knees way too early compared to most people. He hasn't been able to stay healthy, and it's a cheap deal. It's the same average annual value as the Dolphins got Jordan Howard for. So, I think it's going to be a great deal for Atlanta if he can stay healthy, which is the big if, obviously. Seahawks signed defensive end Bruce Irvin to a multi-year deal. They also signed Brandon Shell to a 2-year, $11 million deal. He'll boost their offensive line. The Bills, their only free agent signing so far outside of trading for Stephon Diggs, they signed Mario Addison, a defensive end, to a 3-year deal. The money hasn't been announced yet. The Jets also not making too many moves. They only made one. They signed offensive guard Connor McGovern to a 3-year, $27 million deal. The Chargers signed 3 guys. Brian Bulaga to a 3-year, $38 million deal. They also signed Chris Harris Jr., the former standout cornerback on the Denver Broncos, to an undisclosed deal. Excuse me. And they also signed Linval Joseph to a 2-year, $17 million deal. The Chargers obviously are one of those teams. They have the potential to be really, really, really good. They lost Phillip Rivers, obviously, now.
Yeah. They
They said they're moving along with Tyrod Taylor to be their quarterback. They'll probably draft someone in the later rounds, too, to be their backup for a year. But outside of, the quarterback spot and Tyrod Taylor, not knowing really what he's going to bring, they have a lot of moving parts in that team. Guys that haven't lived up to their potential over the last few years. So they're making these, they're trying to get these guys. I think Chris Harris Jr. is a great addition to that team because they need help on defense badly. And he's been a standout cornerback for many, many years in Denver. A couple Pro Bowls here and there. He was with them on their Super Bowl runs. And he'll help them tenfold, I think. The Steelers signed Derek Watt. He's one of the few remaining full-time fullbacks to an undisclosed deal. He'll be playing alongside his brother T.J. Watt in Pittsburgh. And the Steelers also signed tight end Eric Ebron to a 2-year, $12 million deal. It'll be weird to see him outside of...
He was on the Colts?
He was on the Colts, I believe, yeah. So he gets $6 million a year. It'll be weird seeing him in a different uniform, but I guess the Steelers need a tight end. The Broncos signed the other big running back, Up for agency, Melvin Gordon to a 2-year, $16 million deal. He was the big surprise last season, holding out with the Chargers.
Yeah, and then not really.
Not playing super well when he did come back, letting Austin Eckler play the majority of the time and get the majority of the snaps and perform really, really well and basically run him out of town. But he goes to the Broncos. It'll be him and Philip Lindsay kind of competing for the most. I would say Lindsay almost is one-upping him currently just based on, how the last 2 years went. But he'll get some playing time too, and obviously it'll come down to if he can go back to his former Charger self. The Washington Football Club signs Thomas Davis to a one-year deal. He's 38. He's a linebacker. It'll be his last year in the league probably. He announced he was retiring a couple years ago, but then said, nah, screw it, and he came back. And obviously he'll try and help Washington this year, although they still don't have a great team. The Bengals signed a couple guys. They signed DJ Reader to a 4-year, $53 million deal. He's a defensive tackle. And cornerback Trey Waynes to a 3-year, $42 million deal. He was a longtime Minnesota Viking cornerback. And obviously they're trying to get a few guys to build around who they supposedly will pick in Joe Burrow in the upcoming draft.
Yep.
And, alongside A.J. Green, if he's ever healthy, they're trying to...
Joe Mixon.
And Joe Mixon in the backfield. They got a couple guys here and there. Not a good team by any stretch, but there's solid guys at every spot, I would say. All right, not every spot. What am I talking about? At certain spots on that team. That's what I meant. The Saints signed a bunch of guys, too. They re-signed quarterback Drew Brees to a 2-year, $50 million deal. That'll probably be his last contract, too. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually hangs him up after this year.
Yeah.
A lot of that money is unguaranteed. It's also what is probably front-loaded, too. So I wouldn't be surprised if he opts out after 1 year. They also signed wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders to a 2-year, $16 million deal. He went to the Super Bowl last year with the San Francisco 49ers. He did relatively well. He was a long-time Denver Bronco, I believe. Yeah. But he's moving on to the Saints. Him and Michael Thomas, obviously, will be a big duo along with Taysom Hill, Alvin Kamara, Jared Cook. They have a really good offense going if Drew Brees can keep it up. They got Malcolm Jenkins, who they formerly had quite a number of years ago. They brought him back to an undisclosed deal. And they also signed Andrews Piat to a 5-year, $57.5 million deal. He was a perennial Pro Bowler the last couple of years, although his advanced stats weren't actually overly good. He was regressing a whole lot, but they're paying him for, I guess, what they think he is capable of doing in this case.
A lot of money.
Yeah, it is a lot of money. It's over $10 million a year. The Jaguars signed linebacker Joe Schobert to a 5-year, $53.8 million deal. They're going to try and obviously help boost their defensive core that just was blown apart. Everyone traded, everyone leaving in free agency. And Joe Schobert's no schmuck. He's really, really good. He played really, really well in the Cleveland Browns. They're hoping that he can continue that for the years to come. Panthers got their new starting quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater to an undisclosed deal. And then correspondingly, they said, Cam Newton, go fuck yourself. Go find a team to trade us to, or for us to trade you to. Now that's a whole thing. Them saying, blaming him, wanting out, and him saying, don't mince my words. Right, so that's kind of a weird situation, but Bridgewater will be starting games for them next year. The Colts signed Anthony Castonzo to a 2-year, $33 million deal, and they also signed the aforementioned Phillip Rivers to a 1-year, $25 million deal. It'll be weird seeing him in a Colts uniform, but it's a 1-year deal. It's a prove-it deal again. Not that he doesn't have to prove anything, but he really has to prove that he cuts down on the interceptions. He cuts down on, the dropbacks and taking sacks.
Having kids?
Yeah, having kids too. That'll be tough right now, the whole 10-person maximum in the house.
Yeah.
They'll have to get rid of a couple. But he'll be on the Colts for next year if the season ever starts. The Cowboys signed All-Star Amari Cooper to a 5-year, $100 million deal. He was their standout wide receiver. $20 million a year, that's a big deal. A lot of it is guaranteed money. They also signed Gerald McCoy to a 3-year deal and Clinton Dix to a 1-year, $4 million deal, the free safety.
What a name.
Yes, who fell off surprisingly he was super good a few years ago, still relatively young, didn't perform overly great with the Chicago Bears last year. But what can you do? He's usable again. Texans signed cornerback Bradley Roby to a 3-year, $36 million deal. That's just filling up another lost spot on defense. For them, they also signed wide receiver Randall Cobb to a 3-year, $27 million deal. I guess they hope that he's replacing DeAndre Hopkins, although I don't think he's really going to do too well. The Eagles signed defensive tackle Javon Hargrave to a 3-year, $39 million deal. That was a bit of an overpay, I thought, just based on he hasn't done anything super, super great at his time in the NFL. The Raiders signed Marcus Mariota to a 1-year deal, undisclosed money. He'll be their backup quarterback, backing up Derek Carr. I think that was a really good signing because although Mariota didn't work out in Tennessee the way they hoped, he was still, I think, the second overall pick, right? In 2015 or something like that. And obviously, Derek Carr has his struggles too, ups and downs, and I think it just needed a fresh scenery for Marcus Mariota. They also signed linebacker Corey Littleton, who I really, really like, to a 3-year, $36 million deal. And then they also signed veteran tight end Jason Witten to a 1-year deal. Obviously, it's not going to be worth so much money. It will probably be around Jimmy Graham money, maybe $8 million a year or something like that, or $8 million for the 1 year. The Broncos also signed Graham Glasgow to a 4-year, $44 million deal. He's a guard, an O-line man. He gets a long-term deal with 4 years. He's done surprisingly really, really well. I don't think anybody thought too much of him when he came into the league, but then he started performing, and now he's gonna get all this money. From the Broncos, the Packers signed outside linebacker Christian Kirksey to a 2-year, $16 million deal. He hasn't actually done too great. A lot of people were saying that was kind of bit of an overpayment, even if it is just 2 years. But I guess the Packers need someone to fill a spot, and Christian Kirksey will do just that. The Bears signed, as I mentioned, Jimmy Graham to a 2-year, $60 million deal. He's fallen off the face of the earth. He was not putting up the numbers that he used to. And they also signed All-Star Robert Quinn to a 5-year, $70 million deal. He'll help boost the defensive line for that team. All the defense they can get will probably help just because they can't score a touchdown. At least they couldn't last year with Mitchell Trubisky. The Lions signed 3 guys. They signed longtime New England Patriot linebacker Jamie Collins to a 3-year, $30 million deal. They also signed Desmond Trufant, the former Atlanta cornerback who was recently released by the team, to a 2-year, $21 million deal. And then Halapumavati Vitae to a 5-year, $50 million deal. He'll help boost their O-line. I think I aced that name because I practiced that yesterday. The Vikings re-signed quarterback Kirk Cousins to a 2-year, $66 million deal, which is ridiculous, I think. But I guess they really, really like him. The Browns, as I mentioned before, signed Austin Hooper to a 4-year, $44 million deal, making him the highest paid
really
tight end in the league. Really good for Atlanta. He was another guy that they let go. That was more of a cost-efficient move, and I guess they already had the Hayden Hurst idea in the back of their mind, thinking we'll let Hooper go, who's still only 25, and we'll get Hayden Hurst in a draft pick. The Browns also signed offensive tackle Jack Conklin to a 3-year, $42 million deal. He did super, super well with the Tennessee Titans last year on their O-line. And they also signed quarterback Case Keenum to a 3-year, $18 million deal. Now, supposedly, he'll back up Baker Mayfield. I think it'll probably be the other way around, and I think Baker Mayfield will probably be backing up Case Keenum eventually. Because, neither of them have done overly great. The Buccaneers signed Jason Pierre-Paul and his 3 fingers on one hand to a 2-year, $27 million deal. And then the big one, they also signed Tom Brady. Yippee. I know so many people care. It was a 2-year, $50 million deal. A lot of it's guaranteed, a lot of it's front-loaded. My thoughts on that are abundantly clear. I think Tom Brady's, I don't care what he's done. You're paying for what he can do now, and what he can do now is not a whole lot. He's not the quarterback he once was. Far from it. I think, honest to God, you'd be better off with Jameis Winston. I really do. I don't think Tom Brady is anywhere close to what you hope he can be. You have guys like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. That's great. You need a guy that can get you the ball. And Tom Brady is not going to get you the ball as many times as he used to. Sure, Jameis Winston throws interceptions. Go and sign Marcus Mariota before Oakland did, or Las Vegas. Right? There's so many other... I don't know. I think Tom Brady was a useless option for them, and I don't think it's going to go well for them. I really don't think they'll make the goddamn playoffs, which is what everyone seems to think. Their defense is still a joke outside of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Their offense is nothing spectacular. You're paying Brady to try and get the ball to Evans as many times as he can before Evans gets hurt like he did last year. And then Chris Godwin, who's arguably was their best wide receiver outside of Mike Evans last year for the majority of the time, you're relying on him to put up numbers like that again. It's, you're betting on the wrong things, I think, here. And I don't think Tom Brady is something you can be betting $50 million on, especially when almost all of it's guaranteed money. The 49ers signed defensive end Eric Armstead to a 5-year, $85 million deal. He's put up great numbers. He gets a super long deal. And then the Dolphins, my favorite part about this, signed 10 different guys, all of which I think will be really, really good because none of them are overly expensive outside of Byron Jones. Running through all of these, they signed Eric Flowers to a 3-year, $30 million deal, an offensive tackle with Washington and the Giants the last couple years. Originally, he was drafted as a guard, didn't do too well moving to tackle. He's put up monster numbers since moving to tackle. They signed Shaq Lawson to a 3-year, $30 million deal. He was defensive end with the Buffalo Bills. He was more of a sub-in player for them last year, but put up really good numbers. I think 6.5 sacks in like 15 games or something like that. He'll get the starting job in Miami, no doubt. They also signed longtime outside linebacker on the Patriots, Kyle Van Noy, to a 4-year, $51 million deal. Really like that move. And then the big one, the big splash, they signed, the best cornerback on the market, Byron Jones, to a 5-year, $82.5 million deal. Him and Xavier Howard, who they're going to keep, I would say probably the best cornerback duo in the NFL right now. Certainly, I think they're the two highest paid guys. I think they'll be really, really good. They got running back Jordan Howard on a 2-year, $10 million deal. Super cheap. You're paying him the same average annual value as Todd Gurley. I think Jordan Howard was screwed around with too much in Philadelphia. I think he can be really, really good. I think he had like almost a 4 yards per carry, 4.0 yards per carry last year when he did play. He can catch the pass, he can run, he's short, he's small, he's fast. I think it's a great signing for them, and I think they'll also probably get a running back in the draft. So I don't think Howard will have to worry too much about, playing all the time. They also signed Emmanuel Ogbah to a 2-year, $15 million deal. He'll help out on their defense. He put up great numbers last year, too. Free safety from Cincinnati, Clayton Fayedelem, to a 3-year, $8.5 million deal. And then a couple 1-year guys. Camu Grieger-Hill, who's a special teams master with the Eagles. Elandon Roberts, who's an inside linebacker and also a fullback with the Patriots. And Ted Karras to a 1-year, $4 million deal, who will be their probably starting center because they got rid of Daniel Kilgore. He was also the center on the Patriots last year. And then outside of that was a lot. There's still going to be a lot more because, there's so many guys out there still. Probably not as crazy as all this, but there's still a couple notable ones out there. We mentioned the Panthers saying Cam Newton can go try and trade himself. And then Newton complaining back, saying, "No, you guys are making me do this," and yada yada yada. It's old now. Nobody cares. Teddy Bridgewater is your starting quarterback. Move on.
Yep.
The Falcons also released Devontae Freeman. He was their longtime running back for many years. They released a whole slew of guys, and I know they're still getting guys. They're signing guys too. They're getting guys who they like, but I think, the guys that they did get rid of probably weren't. I know they're money moves, right? So you can only really bitch and moan about them so much, but from a fan's perspective, it would have been nice to keep some of these guys,
like Cooper.
Yeah, like Cooper, like Freeman, like that, like the cornerback Vic. I'm completely forgetting his name. I was about to call him Vic Router, and then I'm like, nah, that's the TSM curling guy. But anyways, a lot of these guys. The Panthers released safety Eric Reed, who, as I mentioned, I think the Miami Dolphins should go after because they need help at safety. He can be a good free safety for them. The Broncos released Joe Flacco 1 year after claiming that he's the next coming of Christ. That didn't work out at all. They like Drew Lock, I guess. And the Rams released linebacker Clay Matthews. Ramon Foster announced his retirement, even though he was only 34, but we all know how that goes in the NFL. Way too many guys too young are retiring from the games. And then, from the league, I should say. And then they got their new CBA done, much to the disagreement and overall pissiness of many of the players around the league. Barely got through. It was like a 60 vote favor of it advancing. And in essence, what it is, it's a 10-year deal. The playoff teams will go up from 12 to 14, so there'll be two more teams getting in the playoffs. It'll go from a 16-game season to a 17-game season. However, it'll shorten the preseason from 4 to 3 games. I mean, I don't think many players are too fond of that, the 17 games, because it's one more. It's such a physical sport.
Yeah, it's one more week. You have to get your body out there.
Yes, especially if you're a losing team and you know you're going down. It's just another week of, getting your guys possibly hurt really, really badly. And then lowered drug penalties as well, which was, a big talking point in this because, guys like Josh Gordon, all these guys getting suspended for, drug infractions, in essence, smoking too much weed and getting caught for it. So they lowered the restrictions on that. I actually think it's no penalty now.
I think I saw that.
I don't know. There's a lot of technicalities in it. I'm sure there's still probably some, slap on the wrist compared to what it used to be. Yeah. And then outside of that, there's a lot of controversy. Players are, I like it, I don't like it. Well, who cares? It's happening now. You got to get used to it. I know that's easy for me to say considering I've never played football and never will, but it is what it is. You're getting paid a lot of money to play that game. Mm-hmm. And while I do sympathize with the whole, CTE and all that and head injuries, I think enough guys liked it. Over 1,000 guys voted for it to move on. So I think take it with a grain of salt. It's not the best thing. It's not the worst thing. It's doable. You're not gonna get suspended for smoking weed. Whatever. I guess if that's your biggest issue. But anyways, so that's about that. Overall, I would say we didn't even include any NBA stuff in this just because there's
nothing.
I mean the world's still in shambles. Nothing will ever stop us from getting one of these podcasts done. Apparently, we're still alive and kicking so far. Bunch of players testing positive.
I just got another notification. Another Senators player tested positive. I mean, as soon as it's one, it's two, right? At least. Well, yeah. Like a guy on the same team.
But yeah, there's a lot of ones. Obviously, the more tests you do, the more positives you'll get, right? That's just the way the world works. But it's weird. It's weird because nobody knows. It's weird. It was the first time I think I saw since 1888 that there will be no major sporting event played in April or something like that. It's nuts.
That's crazy.
It's nuts. And obviously they shouldn't be playing. I'm not saying that, but it's weird to think about, weird to not have anything to watch for people like me. But anyways, that was a lot. It was a lot more than last week.
Yep.
I'm not forgetting about this Jordan Romano thing. We really got to do that. Because, I mean, what the hell could possibly happen this week that, in the sporting world? More NFL, a little bit more of NFL. Maybe we can get him on. I'll hit him up, see if we can get him on next week. Figure out the phone thing, see if he can call in, see if we can hear him, see if he can hear us. Stuff like that. Maybe we'll bring back the final round of trivia.
Oh, yeah, it's 1-1.
Yeah, somebody's got to finish the other one off here. But, so there'll be stuff. We'll be back, without a doubt, I don't think. I refuse to skip a week for this for any dumb reason at all. Even if the world's going to hell and the apocalypse is here and we're all dying. I will go down recording. Anyways, that's about it for this one, so I guess we'll talk to you next week.